Hi everyone, welcome back to our fourth grade YouTube channel. I am videoing right from a very familiar spot right now, our fourth grade classroom. I just got done putting bags together for you guys to pick up, and I thought I would read chapter 2 while I was here. I know how much everyone misses me and our class, and I do miss you guys a whole lot these days. And I hope you all are doing well and being safe and practicing social distancing. All right, so here goes chapter 2, Tess, Tess, Tess. When October came and Mrs. Schralenberg still hadn't mentioned the statewide test, Cricket grew more concerned than ever. Finally, she raised the question, how come all the other fourth grade classes are studying for the big standardized test and we're not? She asked her teacher. The test that you're referring to won't be given until April. Mrs. Schralenberg replied, I don't want to spend all our class time getting ready for them. There are many things that one needs to learn when one is in fourth grade, in addition to the information covered on the state exam. But how can we do as well as the other kids then? Asked Cricket. Julio knew Cricket's goal was not to do as well as other kids. She wanted to do better than them. I promise you that this is not something you have to worry about, the teacher said. Julio wondered what she meant. The word you could apply to the whole class, or it could just mean Cricket. But why are the other classes doing different work from us? Cricket asked. She was like a dog with a bone, thought Julio. She would not give it up. Listen, class, Mrs. Schralenberg said, looking around the room to be certain that she had everyone's attention before her eyes returned to Cricket's face. The standardized tests that you will be taking in April are given to every single fourth grade in this state. They're giving so we can measure how students are doing compared to other fourth graders in this school and in all the other schools within the state. Mrs. Schralenberg paused for a moment. But did you know that these statewide tests are given to check the teachers as much as the students? If my class always did poorly on the test, I wouldn't be standing in front of this room. The truth is, my students do just as well as or perhaps even better than the other fourth graders throughout the state. And my method is not to do anything about the test before we return to school in January after the new year. Trust me, you'll be prepared for those big tests, and in the meantime, let's not make a fuss about them. She waited a moment for this information to sink in. Can you be patient? She asked Cricket. I guess so, Cricket said reluctantly because she was still not totally convinced. I can be patient even though I'm not in a hospital, said a voice. Lucas had been practicing ventriloquism from a book he'd gotten at the library, but either the book wasn't very good or else Lucas hadn't mastered the skill yet, because everyone knew who said those words and everyone laughed. Take care of yourself. I don't want you in the hospital, Mrs. Schralenberg said. She looked directly at Lucas, though she didn't mention his name. Obviously, she'd known who had made that joke too, Julio thought. Lucas would have to work at throwing his voice a whole lot more if he wanted to fool their teacher. It was weird. Just as the students began talking about tests at school, there was a lot of discussion about tests at Julio's home too. Lately, his grandmother hadn't been feeling very well. She was tired all the time, and she complained about everything her eyes, her head, her legs, her feet, and her stomach too. I have too much body, she moaned to the family. Mrs. Sanchez was worried about her mother, and she arranged to take time off from work. She spent 2 days at the local medical center while her mother took a battery of tests to check her health. On the second day, when they returned home, Julio's grandmother turned to her daughter and said, I'm going to bed. It's only 4 o'clock, said Julio, who had just come from school a short while before. It's 4 o'clock for you, said grandmother in Spanish. For me, it's 400 o'clock. I'm exhausted. Julio turned to his mother for an explanation. Your grandmother has had lots of tests, she said. It's worn her out. Tests? Asked Julio. His grandmother hardly knew any English. He couldn't imagine how in the world she could be tested. Maybe they had special tests in Spanish for people like her. But then Mrs. Sanchez went on to explain she had a blood test and a test to check if her heart is working properly and a lot of other medical procedures. It's not easy getting old, she warned her sons, but maybe there are some medicines to help her. The doctor doesn't want to prescribe a new and stronger arthritis medication until he's certain that it won't have a bad effect on other parts of her body, as he wants to be sure that nothing else is wrong with her too. Poor Abuela, said Julio, as if statewide school tests and medical tests weren't enough. Ramon had a test on the brain too. Ramon was a high school senior and he was taking driver's ed. He had learned all the rules about driving, and now he was actually going out in a car twice a week with an instructor and 2 other students. Each student had a chance to drive the school-owned car and practice making right and left turns. Then they progressed to U-turns and parallel parking. Ramon loved driving. For 2 years now, he'd been saving money from his after-school jobs to buy a car. New cars cost thousands and thousands of dollars. But by the time I get my driver's license, I should have about $2,000 in the bank. And I can get somebody's old car with that money. Don't forget, you need money for insurance and for gas, their mother reminded Ramon. If you're not careful, that car will own you instead of the other way around. You don't want to spend every penny you ever earn maintenancing a car. I won't care, said Ramon, grinning broadly. You know, I wanted a car since I was a little kid. That's true enough, Mrs. Sanchez agreed, nodding. Their grandmother, who had come back into the room, made a comment in Spanish. He was pushing a slice of bread along the table and making sounds like a car when he was 2 years old. Nelson let out a loud laugh. Well, if you don't buy a car, you can get an awful lot of bread for $2,000, he told Ramon. White bread, whole wheat bread, rye bread, rolls. Rolls would be the best for pushing across the table. Vroom, vroom, he said, trying to imitate a car speeding off. Nelson was 2 years younger than Ramon, so he still had a long wait until he could think about owning a car. Ramon looked at Nelson and shrugged. I can't get a car until I get my license, he reminded his family. And I can't get a license until I pass my driver's test. It's not going to be easy. It will be a piece of cake for you, said Julio to his brother. He looked up on his older brother and couldn't imagine Ramon not succeeding in everything he did. No, it will be a slice of bread, said Nelson. You won't be making the test for another couple of months, Mrs. Sanchez said. By then, you'll be able to drive fine. You'll know how to make those turns perfectly. You can make a U-turn? Said Julio, trying to make a joke. Yeah, well, here's my problem, said Ramon. I'm the only one in driver's ed whose family doesn't own a car. Everyone else gets extra practice by going driving with their parents. But the only time I'm behind the wheel is the 15 or so minutes of class time. It's just not enough. And I wish I didn't have to take a road test. Why can't you finish taking your driver's lessons and then begin driving the way you take freshman English in high school and then automatically go on to sophomore and junior and senior English? You have tests in school all the time, Mrs. Sanchez pointed out. But driving is different. If you couldn't drive, you wouldn't drive. No way, said Nelson. There are enough bad drivers out on the roads now who did pass tests. Imagine if anyone who thought they were good enough just got behind the wheel of a car. You'd be in danger every time you crossed the street. You're absolutely right, Mrs. Sanchez said to Nelson. Then she turned to Ramon. Once you have your license, you'll be glad you can be sure the other drivers on the road have passed their driver's test too. Yeah, well, I sure wish we owned a car so I would practice more, Ramon said. Don't worry, Julio told his brother. You're so smart, you won't need as much time as everyone else to learn how to drive. Julio looked proudly at his older brother. He just knew Ramon was clever enough to do anything he wanted to. And that's the end of Chapter 2, Test, Test, Test. Look back for tomorrow on Chapter 3, The Garage Sale. Be safe and be well. Miss you, 4th graders.